This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
When we feel stuck or off, it's often a symptom of a larger problem. Just like a fever alerts us to an infection, life's problems can signal a deeper issue. These problems can then guide us towards our true selves. Joining me today is Rachel. I stumbled on your name. Astarte. To chat about developing our true self. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Lucy.
Apologies, I stumbled on your name.
That's all right. It's not a very common name.
So, what is the true self? Can you explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah, and the short answer is your true self is the person that you are when you feel as though you are in connection with spirit, with your true nature, the thing that makes you who you are, right? So when you're not trying to please anyone else, when you're really looking at yourself as a resource, that you can feel comfortable being who you are, no matter what group of people you're with. So that's the true self in a very nutshell version of it. What's beautiful about developing your true self is that it's unique for everyone because we are all unique. So there may be certain paths that we might take that are similar to find our true self, but whoever that person is going to be very unique to you. So it's a beautiful journey to finding out, who am I really? Who do I want to be in this brief lifetime that we have? And how can I feel like I'm playing at the top of my game, doing the best I can to in this lifetime, honoring who I truly am.
Because for a lot of us, we don't even stop to ask those questions. I don't even know, for myself, I don't even know if I knew that I could ask those questions.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my mid 40s that I even begin to scratch the surface on that. So, I mean, I know personally the benefits that I've received and how my life has changed since finding my true self, my authentic self. But what are some of the larger benefits that people can experience when they take the time, they do the inner work, and they discover their true self?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I'd love to hear if this resonates with you personally on your own journey. When we are functioning as our highest self, our true self, we are so much better able to contribute to all of life as a whole, right? So if I spend my life trying to please other people or be liked by everyone, or to have the right job or make a certain amount of money, and my inner self is telling me that's not really what I want to do, but that's what everybody else is doing, and therefore I want to fit in, right? I'm not being my authentic self, and therefore I'm not bringing 100% to whatever it is I'm doing in the world. We get enough people doing that, and you get people who are who resent their lives, who start bickering with close people who are close to them. We may even develop physical illness because of the stress, right? A lot of psychological crashes happen because we haven't really taken the time, as you mentioned, to find out who we are and what do we really want. We immediately join this assembly line of life where we are told by whatever society we're in, this is what you need to do. You need to find a partner, get married, have children, have a job, have a house, retire. Even the concept of retirement, like that's a whole other podcast, right? What does that even mean? And so So yeah, so if we stop and question, say what is it that I'm really good at? What gives me joy in the world? Well, the benefits of that are incredible, because when you're resonating at that high frequency, you're able to give back so much more to the people in your life, whether they're very close to you or they're colleagues or friends, or even just someone that you meet in your day to day, whether it's the post office worker or the server at a restaurant, you see.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find out who wrote this list of things that we're all supposed to do.
Yeah, if you find that
'Cause
person, let me know. I have a few choice words.
we're going to smack them around a little bit. Because it's true. We do fall into this pattern, this habit of going through the motions of doing these things. And I mean, you may go through a process of what do you want to do when you're, 16, 17 in high school, and you have to figure out what you're going to do after high school.
Sure.
But honestly, at 16, 17, are we really capable of choosing what we're going to do with the rest of our life?
Mhm.
No, it can change. Life
Exactly right.
changes. So for me, what I found before I went through this process, and I was forced to go through this process because of crisis.
Mm,
Um, when I look back, I want to say I was small
mm,
because I didn't know how large I could be. I dimmed my own
beautiful,
light because I didn't know that I could shine it. Um,
beautiful.
and I was miserable. I was miserable to the people around me.
Hmm.
I didn't have any reason to be because, I had two great kids, had a house, great husband.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say I had a great job because I think because of my unhappiness, I use the term I was invited to leave several jobs
Great.
because I wasn't happy and it was coming
Right.
through. When you're in that place of pain and disconnect, it resonates in different ways in your life. And I think for me, I eventually became combative with my
Hmm.
environments. And I went through crisis. I sort of hit my rock bottom, and it was in those moments that I had to start to dig and
Hmm.
figure out who I was and what and the one of the very first steps that I took to coming out the other side was creating that vision of, well, if I don't want to be this person anymore, who do I want to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And I loved what you said about um, before you're hitting rock bottom, you're actually being combative with the people that you love around you. And imagine, and that word is so powerful, that you're trapped, right? You're trapped in this persona that doesn't fit anymore. And what usually happens when an animal is trapped? They get violent, right? And that's exactly what happens to us psychologically. Either we lash out or we lash in, and we do self-harm emotionally or even physically, uh, to try to get out of that situation. What's really beautiful though, and the quote that you had at the beginning of the podcast is really powerful too, for this reason, which is when we have these problems, they are actually beacons of light guiding us to where we need to go. So when you realize I am miserable and I don't like my job, or I'm in a dead end relationship, and or I'm with an abuser, or I all of my friends are toxic, or whatever it is, once you have that realization, that's the light on the dashboard going off saying you need to change something. It doesn't mean your life is bad or that you're wrong or you made terrible choices. We don't have time to kick ourselves for that. You did what you needed to do to get to where you are, and now you're being called to do the next thing, right? So when we stop pathologizing our quote unquote problems and start seeing them as helpers, right? that helps guide us, as you experience, to finding out who you truly are. And that question is so important. If I don't like who I am right now, who do I want to be? That door opening is one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had as a psychotherapist, when someone actually realizes, I can change this, but I don't know how, and I don't know where I'm going. And I say that's the excitement of the adventure. That's the hero's journey. It is scary. And it's also so beautiful. It's the hero's journey. The hero doesn't know what's about to happen when he or she sets off on that first step of the journey. And there's going to be some scary stuff. Of course there is. But if you begin to see the process as a whole, then you're better able to tolerate the discomfort of whatever that shift is.
And I think the importance is reflecting and reframing, because you know, when you're trapped in the negativity of your own mind,
Mm-hmm.
when you're faced with problems, then you ask questions like, why me? Why is this happening?
Right.
You become the victim, and you sort of create more situations of victim. But when you can look back and realize, if I didn't go through that, if that didn't happen, if I didn't make that choice, then I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Right. And you wouldn't be able to be where you are right now.
And and I think we have to look at our decisions with grace and realize that we made the best decision that we could at that time. And when we know better, we do better. And we're constantly evolving and growing.
Yeah, beautiful. That's really beautifully said. And that's absolutely right. So even when we look at these problems and we ask a question like, why is this happening to me? That question can be answered with, well, because you're a screw up. And if you had just done it a different way, we wouldn't be here in this mess now, which is usually how we go. That's the negative self-talk, which, by the way, is not our own mind. Somebody had to teach us to think about ourselves that way, right? So it's really important to say, whose voice is this? Because it's not mine. It's not the one I was born with. Somebody had to teach me to kick my own butt. You know what I mean? But if we also look at the question as why is this happening to me, as an opening instead of a closing. Why is this happening to me? Oh, I know, I wasn't following my true self. Look at all the sacrifices I made of my true self in order to fit in with society, or in order to please my parents, or in order to, have a societal group that would be welcoming of me. You know what I'm saying? So, a specific group, right? Finding your tribe is really important, but you don't find your tribe until you know who you are. Not, when you're just trying to put on the outfit of whatever the society is expecting of you, right? But when you find out who you truly are, then your people flock to you.
Well, because all too often we're just trying to fit in, because the minute that you don't fit in, you become a target.
Right. Well, that's the whole concept of attachment theory. We want to belong. There are a few things that all human beings need. We need to be understood. We need to be seen. We need to be heard. We need to be loved. So we are constantly seeking that. As soon as, if we're lucky enough to have parents who supported us and loved us, then we go in, we have secure attachment. That's great. We go out into the world and we're still looking to connect with other people on some level. But most people are not securely attached. They didn't get the kind of upbringing that is supportive of them. And so they even more begin to seek outside of themselves for some kind of ground that they feel they can stand on. So if that means, I have to wear my hair a certain way, or I have to look, my body has to look a certain way. Women deal with that all the time. For men, I have to make a certain amount of money, and women too, because things are kind of dovetailing now. It's not so cut and dry as it was when I was growing up. But this idea of status and all of that gets, pounded into our psyches. And the idea of belonging, right? The idea of belonging to the group, the clique, the whatever, instead of asking like, wait a minute, is this really what I want? Yeah.
And once you discover who you are, you may not be aligned necessarily with all of the people that you're currently aligned with, but you will attract those people. once you
Yes, yes.
do understand who you are, and you figure out, who that person you want to be is. And and this goes back down to the law of attraction, is that once you feel it, you're putting out that energy, so you are going to be bringing those people back into your life.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that you teach is solitude practice.
hmm
What is
Yeah.
that?
A solitude practice is a dedicated time that you set aside every day for yourself, to celebrate yourself. It's very important when we think about solitude, most of us have a negative connotation with that word. When are we told to be alone as children? Go to your room, you're being punished,
Punished.
right?
Yeah.
Go to your room, think about what you've done. So the idea of being alone has the stigma of punishment, of something negative. A solitude practice is not that at all. What it actually is a moment or two. It could be 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, if you have the ability to take off and have a holiday by yourself, that you dedicate to your own well-being. And the reason that we do that is to recharge our batteries. We spend so much time taking care of others. All parents understand what that means. And people who aren't parents have other responsibilities to their friends, to their own families, to their jobs, right? So we're giving all the time. And then everything else we just talked about for the last 15 or so minutes, right? Trying to fit in, trying to do blah, 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 right? So we're out there. When do we take a moment for ourselves to ask these big questions that you and I have been asking, which is, what do I want? What gives me joy? Who cares? I should care, right? So the solitude practice is a dedicated amount of time you put aside every day, and it can change. Sometimes you only get 120 seconds. Sometimes you get a half an hour. Sometimes you might get a couple hours, it depends on your situation. The important thing about a solitude practice is that you choose to do something that gets you closer to yourself, that you enjoy, right? So that could be meditation for some people who like to do that. Great. It could also be journaling. It could be coloring. It could be knitting. It could be taking a nice hot bath or a long walk, right? It could be just dancing. I do that one a lot. I put on some Bob Marley and I dance it out. And but the key word here is the celebration of the self. And why do we do this? Well, the more we do it, like any practice, the more we begin to shift some of those old wounds of unworthiness. When you take time for yourself every day, eventually the neural pathways in your mind are changing to say, oh, I'm worth this. And then when someone crosses a boundary or speaks poorly to you, you're like, no, I'm not going to let that go. I need to say with love and respect, I don't appreciate being spoken to that way, or whatever the situation is, right? So you begin to be your own advocate after some time. The other part is that we do this not only for ourselves, but for everyone else, right? We give back once our batteries are charged, we're much better able to give back to those people around us, whether they are loved ones, our friends, or colleagues, and strangers. So it's really, really important for us to take that time.
It was definitely one of the elements that I was missing before I went through all of this. Is I had no concept of self-care, solitude, self-reflection. I didn't have any of that. I'd open my eyes in the morning and to be like, oh God, and you just hit the ground running, kids to school, go to work, do all of that, you come home, it's just this endless cycle.
Right.
And about 4 years ago, I did build a very specific morning practice. I love the morning for me. I like getting up when the house is still quiet, nobody else is around, nobody's asking anything of me. I can get up and I just have that quiet time to myself. And I have a routine of journaling,
Mhm.
yoga, and meditation.
Beautiful.
And I take about an hour, but it has completely changed, and it gives me the ability to, when stuff comes up in the day, even when somebody says something to you or they behave in a certain way, I now have the ability to go, oh, whatever.
Exactly.
That's like,
Yeah.
like, so in a lot of ways, I don't give a shit about a lot of stuff. I just don't let it bother me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
Remember,
like, okay, you be you.
exactly. And the other way of that, everyone else is on their own path, right? So you don't have to worry about them. Obviously, we talk about boundaries in my practice. You don't let people run roughshod over you and treat you poorly. That's what the boundaries are for, is to say, when you do this, I feel this. You own your emotions, right? And that's also you championing yourself, and even championing the wounded inner child who is told you don't matter, right? And who cares how people talk to you? Suck it up,
Yeah.
That's not the case. So the idea of this solitude practice is spending time with who should be truly your best friend, which is you. There's one person that travels with us through our entire life from birth to death, and that's us, ourselves. So if you're a good friend to other people, why not be a good friend to yourself? When you're a good friend to yourself, you become a better friend, because your cup is full and will overflow. You can never have too much love, right? But unfortunately, what ends up happening is most people give and give and give and give, and their battery is drained and they got nothing left, but they still try to give, and it comes off as very disingenuous.
Yeah. I went through that. And when you start to do this inner work, ask the important questions, and start truly loving and nurturing yourself, for me, unexpectedly, that's where the whole spiritual side opens up.
Yes. Yep. And that's a big part of it too, because I can hear already a lot of people saying, yeah, well, I don't want to be alone with myself, because my mind will start racing. I'll go through all the things that I've done wrong in my life, and I'll just be back in the same circle. Better to go out into a movie, or hang out with a friend, or make a phone call, or do the taxes, or whatever. When those things come up, what we're being called to do is heal them, because we are sparks of the universe. This is where we came from. Creation created everything around us. The Taoists call it primal unified awareness, which I think is such a beautiful description of what others might call God, or great spirit, or great mystery, or whatever. We all came from this, right? Whether you want to look at, I'm a science geek, so I like to look at quantum physics and talk
Yes.
about the fact that we're all connected.
Yep.
And that's Einstein's spooky action at a distance, or quantum entanglement, or whatever, so that these two particles that they shoot off into space still communicate with each other. Well, didn't that exactly happen in the Big Bang, right? All of this stuff went shooting out into the universe, and guess what? We are all connected. So I find great spirituality in science, and I also find great spirituality in mysticism, because to me it's all the same, right? So again, how does this have to do with our little selves? Well, the more we develop ourselves, the more that you use the word light, your light shining. That's exactly what it is. It's our light shining. Or another way to look at it is, each one of us is a stitch in the great tapestry of existence, right? If our stitch is bright and glowing, then the entire tapestry is alive and well. But if you're not taking care of yourself, and your little stitch in the tapestry is frayed and faded, and then you kind of, your unhappiness rubs off on other people's unhappiness, makes them question themselves, then they start getting frayed and faded. And you can see what happens it's like a virus, really. We're infecting each other with sadness. You know what I mean?
Well, because we all are connected, whether you want to engage in the conversation of quantum entanglement, we all did come from the same, whatever they were, molecules or whatever, at the Big Bang. That's where we all came from. So we all have to be connected in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're looking at it at that level, or just the fact that if I get bitchy with my husband before he goes to work, and then he goes to work and he does something on his commute to somebody who goes and does something, and so on and so on and
Right,
so on,
exactly.
it's out
Mm-hmm.
there. And
Absolutely
that's
right.
why, and that's why one of the things that I love is that when you go through the drive-through to get a coffee or whatnot,
Oh yeah.
and the person in front of you bought you a coffee,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
That's great.
you return the favor, you keep the energy going by
Yep.
buying the person behind you a coffee.
Yeah, that's exactly a perfect and that actually happens in real time, right? So this isn't just hypothetical. This really happens, and it really does energetically make a difference. Energy, spirit, it's the same thing. We don't have to get too woo-woo. This is real stuff.
Yeah. Oh,
You-
absolutely.
one of the easiest ways to check in with spirit, I have, patients who are, I don't understand, I don't want to talk about spirit, I don't know about spirit. Well, that's a huge part of my practice. Spirit is energy, right? So when I say, for example, we do an exercise where I say, um, think about something terrible, right? Make the worst face you can make. Just crumple up your face, curl your body in, and let's hold that for 15 seconds, right? And then I say, how do you feel? Well, I don't feel very good at all. So well, let's do the opposite. Now, biggest smile, like the happiest thing you can think of. How is your body feeling now? Well, I feel much lighter. I feel happier. I said, did anything happen except that I told you to change your facial expression? Nothing happened. Nothing good happened. Nothing bad happened. But even just how we hold ourselves changes the energy around us and within us. So we have to be really careful because we're very powerful, more powerful than we realize.
Well, it's like when somebody walks into the room and you just know
Mm-hmm.
something's off. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have to say anything. You don't even have to look at them. You can just feel the energy and you're like, what is going on? You
Right,
feel it. Nobody
right.
has to do anything. You feel
Mm-hmm.
that energy.
That's right. That's right. And so in a case like that, unless it's someone you know very well, that's when you check in with yourself, and really that's when your energetic boundaries go up to say, this person may be suffering, and I have to be compassionate about that, but I'm not going to let their energy affect my energy. That's where we have to be warriors about it,
Yeah,
about
you have to put up your force field.
yeah, yeah. And
Protect
not to
yourself.
block them out. Yeah,
Yeah.
but not to block them out, but to say, okay, so and again, I always say with love and compassion, you don't want to say, well, that person's messed up, I gotta stay away from them, because that's only uh, you know, making them actually your energy toward them will also be picked up,
Yeah.
right? So it's a beautiful dance that we all have to do.
And you've written a book on
Yes.
this, haven't you?
Yeah, on solitude. Yes, celebrating solitude, how to discover and honor your highest self. So yeah, and it's really meant to be. It's a very small book, and it's meant to be a manual. I what it really came down to was when I wrote it, I was not in a relationship and was pretty much convinced I would never ever be in a relationship. And I said, well, I have to be okay with that. What if, the question that a lot of single women ask, what if I never find my partner? What if I never, that's the society thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to partner up, gotta do it, gotta do it. Well, what happens if that doesn't happen? How am I going to make my life as wonderful as it can be? And so I wrote this book as part of my process of trying to figure out what are the elements that I need in order to support this true self, this highest self. And so it's a manual in that regard, with some exercises and things you can do as you work through the book.
What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, people can find me at my website, which is rachelastartetherapy.com. And I also have a podcast called Self Talk with Rachel Astarte. That's at selftalkpodcast.com. And those are really the best ways to find me. You can find me on Instagram. It's just at Rachel Astarte. Yeah, those are the best ways to get me.
If you're looking at connecting with Rachel, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of the links in there. And Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your stories.
It was absolutely my pleasure, Lucy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Ride, ride. Roller coaster.